Man, what a what an unfortunate game, man, to start the Las Vegas Raiders season. We're gonna talk about this one, man. This one, this one sucked, man. You know, it, early on in this game, I really thought the Las Vegas Raiders were winning this game, man. Early on, the Raiders were up 7-3. It looked like we basically dominated that first half, and honestly, the offense really struggled in that first half. And I felt like when they finally started to put some drives together, they had a couple of massive fumbles. To me, the Raiders lost this game. I don't think the Chargers won this game. I think the Raiders lost this game. And we're going to talk about Antonio Pierce. We're going to talk about Luke Getsy. We're going to talk about Gardner Minshew. And we're going to talk about all of this, man, because I think if the Raiders can fix some things, they can still bounce back, right? And a lot of people on social media are saying the season's over. The season's not over, man. We got a lot of games left. We have a lot of football this season. The Chargers are supposed to be a playoff team this year, right? They're supposed to be a very, very good team. I did not think they're a good team at all, to be honest. I felt like Justin Herbert struggled. In fact, Justin Herbert, 17-26, 144 yards. That is terrible. Gardner Minshew outperformed Justin Herbert, but to be honest, Minshew struggled as well too. You know, he wasn't really pushing the ball downfield, especially in the first half. It seemed like he wasn't really, willing to push the ball downfield until the Raiders actually got behind. And to me, you can't play scared, right? You can't play in the NFL when you have a little bit of a lead. You can't play scared. It's just can't win that way, right? And I felt like Gardner Minshew played scared for a big part of this game, but even more than Gardner Minshew, Luke Getsy's a bad offensive coordinator. And people don't realize this, right? People literally do not realize this when it comes to offensive coaching. Offensive coaches design plays downfield. They design guys open. That's why you can get a backup quarterback in with, Andy Reid, and he'll come in and he'll design a good offense. Kyle Shanahan, you give him any quarterback, Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, he'll design a good offense and guys will be running wide open. Sean McVay, right? These guys will design people open. And I felt like for the Raiders, there was nothing designed open. I felt like there was almost no one open. We had a couple of plays in the game where guys got open on like some deep crossing patterns or on some dagger concepts. Not really sure exactly which one it was since we didn't get to watch the tape. We only watched the actual broadcast angle of it. To me, it just it didn't look like from a coaching standpoint this was a well-coached team. To take that a step further, Antonio Pierce is a bad decision maker as a head coach. And I won't say he's a bad overall head coach, right? Because I think it's too early to say that. I'd be jumping the gun at this point if I said Antonio Pierce is a bad head coach. I don't think that. He's proven that he's a good coach. He's proven he can rally the troops. I think that definitely means something. But what I do think with Antonio Pierce is that he's not a good decision maker. Today we punted the ball on 4th and 1 down by 6 points with 7 minutes left in the game. I understand the strategy. I'm not stupid. I get it. You want to punt the football in the hopes that you get a 3 and out. But the momentum was already shifting, right? The momentum of the game was shifting away from the Raiders, right? In the first half, the Raiders dominated. In the third quarter, the Raiders did some good things early on in the third quarter, but that quickly flipped. At the end of the third quarter, the Chargers started driving downfield, and they scored a touchdown on the Raiders. And they scored a second touchdown in the fourth quarter as well with 4 minutes left or whatever it was. To me, the momentum had shifted, and that is for Antonio Pierce to recognize that the momentum had shifted. Instead, he punted the football thinking that our defense would be able to get off the field and force a 3 and out, and we didn't. Instead, J.K. Dobbins hit us for like 50 yards, and they eventually went downfield and they were able to score a touchdown. To me, Antonio Pierce is a bad decision maker. And at this point, I'm really not sure with him. And, that's its own thing. I think Luke Getsy's a bad offensive coach as well. We're going to talk about this game, man. We're going to really, really talk about this game because, I see a lot of comments. I see people saying, it's time to put Aiden O'Connell into the game. It's time to make, a change here or a change there. And the thing is I think it's just too early to say, hey, we have to make this change at quarterback. We have to make this change, even on the offensive line. If you guys felt like Dylan Parham or Cody Whitehair looked bad, maybe not Cody Whitehair. I think it's debatable because we did draft Jackson Powers-Johnson. I think it's too early to say, hey, let's just change it all up. We got to go 4 or 5 weeks with this quarterback, and we got to see what we have with him. Because once you go to Aiden O'Connell, people don't realize this. What if Aiden O'Connell sucks as well? Because Aiden O'Connell couldn't win the job. So what if Aiden O'Connell struggles as well? And on top of that, I don't even think Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are the bigger issue here. I think Luke Getsy is a bad offensive coach. I had been saying this pretty much the entire offseason. I don't like Luke Getsy, and there's a reason for it. Early on in the game, I believe it was the Raiders' first drive. It was a third down play, and Gardner Minshew went to hand the ball off to Zamir White. I think it was the third play of the game, essentially. He went to hand the ball off to Zamir White, and Zamir White was running an outside zone, which means it's a further angle that Zamir White takes right out of his stance, which means Gardner Minshew, when he's going to turn around and hand the ball off, he has to turn in a specific way. He can turn to the left and then rotate all the way around and hand the ball off, or he can take the ball and take steps. And he didn't do the correct footwork in that. And I know people are going to say, well, hey, that's on the quarterback. And it is. The quarterback has to know, but you don't ever see that. That's something you would never, ever see with any coach out there. But why is it with Luke Getsy we're seeing this in the first game? That's a coaching point. You should have practiced that enough that that's not even questionable at this point. Then on the very next drive, we had a 4th and 1, and we ran a shotgun run for some reason, which didn't make sense on our side of the field, and we didn't get that, essentially giving the Chargers 3 free points. To me, that's a bad decision, and that's bad on Antonio Pierce as well to say, hey, let's go for this. Is 4th and 1, and then it's a bad decision by Luke Getsy to say it's 4th and 1. Let's run out of shotgun. And then Andre James was the guy that got blown up. And with that, Zamir White got tackled in the backfield. I think there were a lot of questionable moments in this entire game. A lot of questionable moments. Early on, there was a play. I don't know if it was the first or second drive, but there was a play in which Trey Tucker caught a pass on like 3rd and 10. It was a nicely executed screen by the Raiders offense. And on that play, Trey Tucker got all the way. I thought he picked the first down. I thought it was a first down right away. But apparently it wasn't. Apparently they marked it, I believe, 3rd and 1. It might actually have been 4th and 1. That might have actually been the 4th down play early on in the game where the Raiders didn't get it. But why did we not challenge that play or at least consider looking into that play? I was pretty damn confident that Trey Tucker picked that first down up. And then just talking about Trey Tucker, where the hell was he this entire game? We heard about all these playmakers that the Raiders had, and none of these guys were really there to be seen. Jacoby Myers, 3 catches for 61 yards. Myers had a pretty good game. Devontae kind of average, right? 5 catches, 59 yards. Brock Bowers, 6 catches, 58 yards. I think the big thing for me was I didn't really see the Raiders push the ball downfield. Right? I did see some, 15 to 25-yard passes in the middle of the field where you had those deep crossers, had those dagger concepts. But to me, it just didn't look good, man. Our offense did not look good. And our offensive line was bad as well. You have to, at some point, consider the offensive line, right? At some point, you have to say, what the hell is this unit doing? Why is this unit not getting it done? Justin Gill says, Raiders are the better team in everything except coaching and luck. I genuinely think the Raiders are cursed. I truly felt that the Las Vegas Raiders actually outperformed the Chargers, right? I felt like the Raiders actually looked better than the Chargers. I felt like we actually did a lot of better things on the defensive side, right? We mostly dominated the trenches on the defensive side. I felt like, on the offense side, we did struggle, but generally speaking, the Raiders offense was probably better than the Chargers offense over the entirety of the game, minus like 2 drives that the Chargers had, which just happened to be the final 2 drives they had the ball. Outside of that, we basically gifted them 6 points. Right? Gardner Minshew had that weird fumble where he tried throwing the ball and he lost his grip or whatever. You can't have that, man. That's a bad play by Gardner Minshew. And then Zamir White had a couple of nice runs. I think one gets called back for a hold. He has another one, and then he fumbles the football. And they get another field goal out of that. To me, it's just unfortunate, man. Shout out to all of you guys with the super chats. Shout out to you, Aunt Six Soldier, member for 40 days or for member for 40 months. Become a member if you guys are not a member to this channel. It supports the channel. Yeah, man, it's just crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy that the Las Vegas Raiders are in a situation where they look better than the Chargers. I think most of us could agree with that early on in the game that we thought the Raiders were going to be able to win this game. And, at some point the momentum just it flipped. right? And you could kind of feel it flipping. And the defense was phenomenal, right? Shout out to every single person on the defensive side of the football. You know, Maxx Crosby was crazy. Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler. These guys were phenomenal out there, right? Those three guys were just flashing, play in, play out. Robert Spillane made a couple of really nice plays on one play. He dropped Trey Pipkins, right? He ran right through him and blew the play up. Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs and Ja'Cory Bennett had a pass breakup early on. These guys were incredible, if you guys ask me, right, on the defensive side. And then they did end up getting gashed for a couple of big plays. I think both of the touchdowns the Chargers had, they had like two long runs that really led to those. Even, 2 field goals the Raiders had given to the Chargers. They had kicked another field goal as well. And that field goal was actually just a really, really big run by, I believe it was J.K. Dobbins that had that one as well. And essentially they got 3 points out of that one play. They got 2 touchdowns and really, just the Raiders just making 1 or 2 bad plays, right? It's unfortunate, man, but I do think that the Las Vegas Raiders will bounce back. I know a lot of people are going to feel down about the Raiders today, as do I. I think the Raiders will bounce back. There are a couple of things where you can say this is why the Raiders lost, right? And the Antonio Pierce 4th and 1 decision, having the ball on the Chargers 43-yard line, that doesn't make sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. You can't be on the 43-yard line, 4th and 1 with 7 minutes left in the game and punt the football. That just doesn't make sense. I think that's one of the big factors right there for the Raiders losing this game. We had 2 fumbles. Gardner Minshew fumbled the ball once. Samir White fumbled the ball once. Those 2 fumbles right there also led to the Las Vegas Raiders losing this game, right? Because those fumbles also came where the Raiders were on the Chargers side of the field. Essentially, you're basically in field goal range. So you just left 6 points at a minimum out there. Then Daniel Carlson had a missed field goal, which was a 49-yard field goal. Carlson's been inconsistent as hell the last year. So I don't know what's up with him, but he has to get his shit together as well. You can't have that. You can't have those inconsistencies, if you guys ask me. So that's 9 points right there, a minimum that you lost because of the turnovers and the missed field goal, essentially. And, what if you score a touchdown on one of those that you fumbled the ball, right? You're leaving a lot of points out there. I think the Raiders can bounce back. They got to play a cleaner game. On top of that, the defense was good, but they didn't force any turnovers. Trayvon Merrick almost had an interception. I think there were a couple other moments where the Raiders might have been close to maybe either forcing a fumble or almost catching an interception or whatever. But at the end of the day, they didn't force any turnovers, and they turned the ball over 2 separate times. And they actually also had turnover on downs a couple times. And I guess they had an interception to end the game as well. So multiple turnovers, right? Multiple turnovers. That's not winning football. But that also does make me believe the Raiders will bounce back. So I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed, but we'll see what ends up happening as we kind of go forward. We're going to get into some of these super chats. It's explicit. G said, Getsy was calling an offense for Aiden O'Connell, not an offense for Minshew. 0 play action, bad run game, bad decisions. I think it's due to not having an option with the quarterback named a starter. 2 way different guys. I disagree with what you're saying. I do agree. I do appreciate super chat, but I do disagree with it. To me, Luke Getsy's just a bad coach. That's what it comes down to. So let's not make excuses for Luke Getsy, who is a bad coach, right? Little things, if you pay attention to, the Raiders will make mistakes. And we don't actually have access to the tape yet, right? We'll get access to the tape tomorrow. The thing is, we're going to realize so many other things, little mistakes, like, a right tackle goes to the right and he expects the right guard to take a guy and they don't swap properly, right? Or we'll have guys downfield, right? We'll be able to watch it on the tape because with the broadcast angle, we're not able to see it. We'll have plays where guys are running into each other downfield, right? There will be moments where we're going to recognize tomorrow. To me, the fact that we didn't have plays where guys were wide open, we didn't even throw the ball deep once, like a true deep shot. I think the only time we threw it deep was the play in which the offense got one of the defensive guys to jump off sides. I think it was late in the game as well. It was just bad, and I see a lot of people saying the offensive line was bad. And I agree with that 100%. I think the Raiders' offensive line was really bad. To me, if you want to have success, the way the Raiders are trying to have success, right? The Raiders are trying to play bully ball, and then they're trying to get their playmakers the ball for their playmakers to make plays. That only works if your offensive line's good. And our offensive line is not good, right? Our offensive line was terrible out there. And one of the things that I was kind of banking on for for it to actually benefit the Raiders, I was banking on Colton Miller to come back and actually, look like a top 10 left tackle and for him to dominate out there. And he didn't do that, right? At least based off of the game, the feeling that I was kind of getting. Again, we'll have to watch the tape to really analyze how he looked over the course of the game. But we know for a fact Colton Miller gave up 2 sacks. We know for a fact Colton Miller was pushed back a couple more times than just the 2 sacks, right? Gardner Minshew ran away a couple times. To me, I expected Colton Miller to come back and actually have success, and he didn't look good. And then Cody Whitehair was constantly being bull rushed into the quarterback. Center had a couple of bad plays, although I didn't really notice him outside of the early play. And then the right guard kind of got pushed back. Right tackle had some losing snaps. It was just bad overall by the offensive line. Quarterback play was way to check the football down, right? We weren't pushing the ball downfield. Offensive coach, got to design some things to be able to push the ball downfield as well. O-line was kind of inconsistent. I hate saying this, Devontae Adams didn't look that explosive to me, and maybe that's the quarterback, right? But to me, even when he had the ball in his hands, he wasn't really making plays. Michael Mayer, right? We had heard all offseason how great he's supposed to be. The opportunities he had, he didn't really make anything happen. He had 2 catches for 3 yards, right? That's not good enough. And then, we'll see as he kind of bounces back next season or next week. We'll see what kind of happens. Brock Bowers did look pretty good, but I feel like our guys just didn't have the ball in their hands downfield, right past the defensive lineman, past the second level, the defensive linebacker. Like, I want to see Brock Bowers get the ball 15 yards downfield, and let's let a safety try to tackle him, and let's put him in a one-on-one with the safety downfield. Let's see if Brock Bowers can make a guy miss. And to me, those are little things that Getsy has to be able to do. Raider Tribe said Getsy will at least get us Cornelius. Here's the thing. The Raiders aren't only going to win 3 or 4 games, right? It's not going to happen. We're going to have moments in the season where we're going to end up winning games. I think our team is still too good, to be honest. I think the Las Vegas Raiders team, no matter how we kind of looked against Chargers, and I think we kind of gave this game away, I still feel like the Raiders are too good to essentially not win like 7 to 10 games. And, even at 7 games, you might still have a top, 12 pick, and you probably still get a quarterback. The Raiders need to get a quarterback, man. I don't care how good Gardner Minshew looks at this point as we go forward. You got to get a quarterback, right? And then same with Aiden O'Connell. Some people are saying, hey, let's start Aiden O'Connell. Do you guys want Aiden O'Connell to play with Getsy? And then what if we make that change going into week 2 and it doesn't look good? Then what? What are we going to say after week 2 if Aiden O'Connell struggles? Gardner Minshew statistically wasn't terrible. He was 25 of 33, 257 yards, a touchdown, an interception. He was sacked 4 times. But yeah, I felt like early on the run game kind of struggled a little bit as well. We'll see what happens next week, man. It's unfortunate because we also do have a Baltimore Ravens team that obviously lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Baltimore Ravens are going to come in. They're going to want to absolutely beat the crap out of the team that they play, and it's going to be the Raiders, right? So it's going to be unfortunate because you got a Baltimore Ravens team that's angry coming in to wanting to beat the Raiders, and I hope the Raiders are also angry, right? That energy that the Raiders had at the end of the game where Joshua Palmer and I forget who the other, I think it was Johnson or one of the other guys, they basically went to I believe it was Marcus Epps, and they were double teaming, and both guys are getting into him, and they're throwing him or being aggressive with him. And then Jack Jones jumps in, Christian Wilkins, Maxx Crosby, these guys all jump in, Nate Hobbs. I hope they have that energy next week against the Baltimore Ravens. Not that the defense needs that, right? I guess the offense really is the one that needs that. Injure DD said Miller cannot win against power. This is a fact. Colt Miller struggles against power, but Khalil Mack isn't crazy strong, right? Khalil Mack has a good, he has good bend, right? He's pretty quick. He is power. He is on the power side, but he's not super strong like Myles Garrett. You would hope that Colton Miller, what's he in year 6 at this point? You would hope that Colton Miller is able to anchor down at this point. But yeah, man, I don't know. It was bad, man. It was really, really, really bad. the O-line has to be better, man. If the Raiders' offensive line cannot have success, it's, especially running the football. It's one thing pass blocking, but if they can't have success run blocking, we're not going to win many games this year at all. And I think the Ravens are a better defense than the Chargers are. I think the Ravens have a better I don't know if I think the Ravens wide receivers kind of suck as well. I guess Zay Flowers is pretty good, but you just got to do better, man. You got to do better all around. It is unfortunate. I think the turnovers was one of the key things for the Raiders. Raiders said chokers definitely didn't beat us. We lost the game from our play and decision making. Chokers did nothing. I agree 100%. Jack Black said, thought you would have been high right now, Sanjit. This is a rough start to the season. I do not get high, so you guys won't ever see me getting high. So that's a fact. But shout out to you for the super chat. S. Dot said, is it time for Powers and P and Parham at tight end? Do you now agree, Sanjit? We need power and force on that O-line. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I do think Jackson Powers Johnson and Andres Pete do need to be in at left guard, right guard. I talked about this in the past. I think maybe like in the last week, I made a video talking about Andres Pete playing right guard, right, in practice. I think Andres Pete needs to start at right guard. Not that it was super noticeable that Dylan Parham was absolutely terrible, but I suspect that when we watch the tape tomorrow, it's going to be really, really bad. I suspect that when we put the tape on, there's going to be a lot of losing snaps where guys are pushed right into Gardner Minshew. I was watching a game earlier. I forget which team it was, but the offensive line was just shutting people down. Right? They're just anchoring down, no pressure. Everybody's swapping on defensive line games. It just looked really, really clean. And then you got the Raiders, right? And our offensive line, we had a play earlier. There were two plays where the Raiders were like basically in field goal range. And then I think Khalil Mack on the first play pushed Colton Miller back and got the sack. I think that was the first sack that Mack had. And then on the very next play, the Raiders gave up a sack to Joey Bosa. On that Joey Bosa sack, right, the Raiders slid to the right. What that means is Andre James, Dylan Parham, as well as Thayer Munford, all three of those guys slid towards the right. There was two guys on that side. And those two guys ran a defensive line game, right, or a stunt. And the Raiders couldn't pick that up. And it was 3 against 2, and that's pathetic. Right? That is straight up pathetic offensive line play. To me, the Raiders got to get better on the offensive line. And I think one of the ways you get better is you put Jackson Powers Johnson in. I don't even know if Andre James is the issue. I just think the guys are weak and they're just not fast processors. It just doesn't look good. It's just unfortunate all around. Let's talk a little bit about the head coach, Antonio Pierce, because this is something I kind of want to do. This is something I want to kind of touch on a little bit. I'm not saying that the Raiders season is over, and I definitely don't want you guys to think that that's kind of what I'm implying when I say this. But Antonio Pierce has not proven to me that he's a good coach. Antonio Pierce not only hasn't proven to me that he's a good coach, he's actually proven that he's actually a bad decision maker, right? Antonio Pierce has proven to me that he is a very, very, very bad decision maker. Just today we had the moments that we've already kind of talked about. I think that 4th and 1 play on the Chargers 43-yard line was one of them. Then on our side of the field early on in the first quarter, we went for it on 4th down. That didn't make sense because by you not getting that, you're essentially giving free points to the Chargers. That's exactly what happened. So you have those two questionable decisions. One time you don't go for it. The other time you do go for it. And then when you do go for it, it's a bad play call, right? You run it out of shotgun. That doesn't make sense. And then you have the Trey Tucker play. Trey Tucker picks up 8 yards on 3rd and 9, and I was confident Trey Tucker had picked the first down up. In fact, I'm going to go back and bring that play up right after I get done with this live video, just to actually rewatch it for myself to see maybe his knee was down. I don't think the NFL kept that whole. Remember in the preseason they're doing like, hey, we're going to use like the technology and we're going to go ahead and just confirm things in the booth. I don't think they kept that technology. I'm pretty sure they scrapped that program. So to me, it's weird that Trey Tucker clearly looked at pick the first down up, but for some reason, Antonio Pierce didn't challenge it. And then we ended up getting stopped. And then you can just go on, right? There's so many moments over. I think there was the first preseason game where Antonio Pierce made another decision, right? That cost us that game. And I know it was preseason, but we've seen this with Pierce. Even last year, he made so many questionable calls, and it just doesn't make sense. I understand that the Raiders defense is one of the best defenses. I think they proved that to me today. Right? The Las Vegas Raiders defense is one of the best defenses. But the unfortunate thing is our offense was not consistent. We had turnovers. We had plays where, 3rd and 4 and Gardner Minshew can't get it done. Right? Rather he gets pressured or he's not willing to throw it or whatever it ends up being. There were just so many moments over the course of this game where it's just all questionable across the board. Our coaching staff on the our head coach on the offense side, it just doesn't look good. And it starts with Antonio Pierce. It really, really does start with Pierce. And again, I'm not saying I'm ready for us to move off of Pierce, but to me, Pierce has 16 games to prove that he is the head coach of the Raiders long term. Because if he's not, our offensive coach sucks. And I will change my opinion on Antonio Pierce if he's good. I would admit, and I'll say it, and I will agree with it. There's no way I'll ever admit to Luke Getsy being good. And in fact, he'll never prove me wrong. Luke Getsy's a bad offensive coach. Don't forget, Luke Getsy was not our first option as an offensive coach. We first wanted Cliff Kingsbury, and I guess we wanted Chip Kelly as our number 2 option. Both guys basically turned us down. And then to the 3rd option went to Luke Getsy. To me, Luke Getsy sucks. He's a bad coach. The Bears fired no one besides Luke Getsy. They kept their head coach. They kept their defensive coach. They kept their general manager. But they fired Luke Getsy. There's a reason for that. He's a bad coach. And I know we might look at and this is another thing that we do have to consider. We might look at the offensive line and say the offensive line's not good. But we don't know 100%. Maybe it's Luke Getsy that's not designing things properly. Maybe Luke Getsy's putting guys in 5-man protections too often. Maybe we're saying, hey, our quarterback's not pushing the ball downfield. Maybe the designs just aren't good, right? Maybe there's something more to than just the guys, right? And that's one thing I will definitely be careful as we kind of go forward. But one of the things to know with Antonio Pierce as we go forward is he has 16 games to prove it. And if he can't prove it, the Raiders should go out and they should hire an offensive coordinator and make him our head coach, right? Rather that's Bobby Slowick, rather that's Ben Johnson, or whichever other offensive coach it is that's legit. But we got to find the guy that can design plays that'll be here long term. Because in today's NFL, defense is cool and all, but defense is not the end all be all, right? You got to score points. It's an offensive league. If the Raiders scored 3 touchdowns in today's game, we would have won this game, right? And obviously play a cleaner game on the offense side. Don't give those free points away. And we would have won this game. Obviously, it didn't end up happening. Let's get into more super chats. If you guys want to be featured, drop a super chat down in the comments below. Great way to support the channel. Also, you get to be featured on the channel. 805 Hunter says this is such a winnable game. Once again, the Raiders beat themselves. We are our own worst enemy. This is fact, man. This is 100% fact. 3 turnovers. The 3rd one doesn't matter. I think the game was over already at that point. But we had 2 turnovers that really impacted this game, and then we had 1 turnover on downs. So we might have had a second one as well. Don't quote me on that. But, turnover on downs is essentially a turnover. So we had 3 total turnovers where the game actually mattered, and then we had a 4th turnover as well at the end of the game. To me, you can't have that. You have to do a better job. It's just not acceptable, man. Baby Shug said AP has never proven to be worthy of a head coach, and it showed today. I wanted them to hire Harbaugh. I think Mark Davis made the decision to go with AP due to how the fan base wanted him hired. Number 9 sucks. I agree. And if you're saying number 9 as in Tyree Wilson sucks, I agree with you on that. There's no question. Honestly, at some point they said Tyree Wilson's out of the game. I didn't even know the guy played, to be honest. I really did not know Tyree Wilson played today. I thought I saw Ellerson Smith out there. I'm pretty sure Janarius Robinson was out there as well. But I agree, man. It sucks, because at the end of the day, we had Maxx Crosby threatening the Raiders, like, hey, I might not be here if Antonio Pierce isn't here. We had guys that were out there supporting AP, and I was okay with the hire, right? Obviously, if you guys have followed me long enough, you guys do know that I was very, very high on the Raiders pursuing Bobby Slowick. Now, fortunately, Bobby Slowick did not actually become a head coach. that past cycle, right? He decided to stay with the Texans. The Texans gave him a raise, which means that if AP continues to struggle, we can still potentially hire Bobby Slowick. I'm a huge believer that if you hire the best play caller as your head coach, and if he's a good head coach, you're going to have success, right? Because what ends up happening when you hire Antonio Pierce's job solely relies on his defensive coach and his offensive coach, right? Guys that are calling the plays on both sides of football. So Patrick Graham, we know, is a phenomenal coach, but the thing is Luke Getsy's a bad coach. The Raiders wanted 2 other guys before they hired Luke Getsy. So that tells you right away what they actually thought about Luke Getsy, essentially. And Luke Getsy's not a good coach, and now our offense struggled today, right? We had some issues on the offensive side, and that basically just, that's what it's going to be with AP. He's going to live and die essentially by how good our play calling actually is. Now, obviously, I'm not 100% out on Antonio Pierce. He obviously has done some good things. We do have to be honest. Without Antonio Pierce, we don't have Jack Jones. We don't have the defense the way it kind of is, right? We have some ballers at the linebacker position in Robert Spillane, Amari Gainer, although Gainer won't play for a while, right, because he's a rookie. Antonio Pierce has done a good job, right? He's done a good job rallying the guys. The defense has obviously been really, really solid. But the thing with the Raiders defense also is we have good players as well on the defensive side. So, I think if we're able to fix that offensive side, our defense is going to be legit, right? And I don't think it's just because of Patrick Graham, although Patrick Graham's a good coach. I think we also have good players on that side. Antonio Pierce has 16 games, man. He has 16 games left to prove that he's the Raiders' long-term head coach. I think Mark Davis has done a really good job. I know some people don't like Mark Davis. I actually do like Mark Davis. I think he's done a really good job in terms of sitting back and letting other people handle the football stuff, right? Because there's some general managers out there that are much more involved, right? There's some owners that are much more involved, right? They don't let the general manager actually do what the general manager should essentially do. And to me, I think Mark Davis has at least allowed other people to control the team, right? It was Reggie McKenzie for the longest time. After the Reggie McKenzie era, he hired John Gruden. Then him and Mike Mayock kind of made the decisions together. He put Dave Ziegler in charge. That obviously didn't work out. And now he's hired Tom Telesco. At least Mark Davis has given the power to these guys to essentially kind of make their own decisions. I appreciate you, Sal, for the support. Big shout out to you. I see someone saying John Gruden for offensive coordinator. I think Gruden would make a good offensive coordinator, man. I really do think that. John Gruden, I think, did do a pretty good job as an offensive coach. I see some people talking about the Nebraska quarterback, Dylan Raiola, to Vegas. It's a long season, man. It's just week 1. I think the Raiders will actually bounce back. Shout out to Raider Drox, who said Michael Vrabel 2025. That would be interesting as well, for sure. What do you think Minshew's self-throw fumble was about? I mean, to me, it just seemed like the ball slipped out of his hand. It seemed like they were trying to run a quick screen over towards the left. The ball obviously came out. That's unacceptable, right? I'll be the first to tell you guys. Some people say that Minshew's too small. His hands are too small. I don't know if that actually impacts you. You guys tell me if that actually impacts you guys. Being too small, is that a thing where you're fumbling the football? I don't know. Maybe it is, but you can't have that, right? That obviously is one of those things where in his mind he's trying to say, hey, I'm going to take this ball. I see it. I'm trying to get the ball out, and he just didn't have the ball in his hands as he tried to throw it, right? He didn't have the proper grip. I don't think it's on the center, right? Sometimes there's different ways you can snap the ball. Sometimes when a guy snaps it, the ball rotates this way versus spiraling properly. I don't think that was an issue at all. But you got to do a better job on that one. I think Gardner Minshew did make a costly mistake on that one. As does Zamir White on his fumble, right? You can't have those. Those two guys have to do a better job in protecting the football. I think Tony Romo at the end of the game was talking about how Gardner Minshew statistically had a good game. And I do think statistically he did, but I think actually watching it wasn't that good, right? If I'm giving him a grade of a 1 through 10, it was like a 6.5, if that, right? There were moments where he did a good job. There are also moments where he didn't do a good job, right? And again, it's hard to say, okay, is it on Gardner Minshew? Was it the offensive line? Was it the offensive coordinator? It's hard to 100% know without actually watching the tape, but it didn't look good, right? You can watch teams, you can watch how offenses are run. The Lions and the Rams play, I think today, Sunday Night Football. Go watch that game and watch guys, be thrown to that are wide ass open, right? Because to me, Luke Getsy's not one of those type of offensive coaches that can actually design plays. And the thing with Gardner Minshew is, I felt like he was pushing the ball downfield in preseason. I know it's preseason, but I didn't feel like he was pushing the ball downfield today. And to me, we gotta go back, watch the tape, and push the ball downfield. Fuku War said, I'm amazed that Raiders content creators like yourself are more qualified to coach this team than who we have. Woke up in Tokyo at 5 a.m. for this mess. Well, it sucks that you got up so early. If the Raiders are playing in like Hawaii or wherever, East Coast or whatever, and I had to get up early, I would do it, right? I enjoy watching Raiders. Every time there's a big play, or when Gardner Minshew threw it to Alexander Madison, Madison made that play and he took it to the house. That stuff fires me up. It gets me excited, gets the juices going. It's something I really, really enjoy. Our coaches are bad. I don't know how else to say it. And I'm not out on Antonio Pierce necessarily, but he is a bad decision maker. I will say that. And then on the other end of it, I also think Luke Getsy's a bad offensive coach. You guys will never not hear me saying that. I might tell you guys in 3 weeks if the Raiders scored 35 points, hey, great job, Getsy. But internally, I will always think to myself, this guy doesn't know what he's doing as an offensive coach. This is now his third year, essentially, as the leader of an offense, right? The last team fired him and him only, right? They didn't fire anyone else. And for the Raiders coming into this game, I felt like the little things were off. Why would you run a zone run? So on the very first drive, the Raiders ran a zone run on 3rd and 1. You don't call zone on 3rd and 1s, because on 3rd and 1s, defenses are stacking the box. They're not going to play a light box in 3rd and 1, right? They're going to have one safety deep. They're going to put 8 guys in the box. Zone runs don't work when there's 8 guys in the box. You run power, right? Or you run some sort of ISO or whatever it is, right? But you don't run zone on 3rd and 1. And Luke Getsy called the zone run on 3rd and 1. Then the next drive, we went for it on 4th and 1. He called the run out of shotgun. That doesn't make sense either. And I'm pretty sure it was a zone run on that play as well, because that was a play that Andre James didn't make his block. And James stepped to the right, and the run was also to that same side, which tells me that's a zone run. So I don't know. It's unfortunate, man. It's explicit. G said Getsy was so ass. No excuses. We knew he was going to be rough. Hopefully we get a quarterback. Bobby Slowick is head coach next year. LOL. I still love the Raiders. Yeah, man. I hear you, bro. I hear you. Raider Nation for life. I hear you. We're going to bounce back. I do think the Raiders will bounce back. Last year we had a great defense that was fired up to play for AP, and they won us games last year, right? This year, so far, it looks like that same defense is kind of here. That same energy is kind of here as well. And I would make the argument, if our offense played a little bit better, honestly, if we just didn't turn the ball over, right? Straight up, if the Raiders played a cleaner game where they didn't have those turnovers, we had 4 total turnovers if you include the turnover on downs. We scored more points, right? We could have kicked field goals on at least 2 of those 4, maybe even that last one where Mark Minshew threw the interception. To me, you're scoring more points, right, at the end of the day. So you got to do a better job for sure. We'll see what ends up happening with the coaching staff. Shout out to Ivan Lopez for the super chat as well. I don't see a comment from you, but shout out to you. Let's get in. I see a comment here. Shout out to you, Ivan. Says, let's go back to Aiden O'Connell and let him sling it. Can't get worse than Trash Rico's backward pass. Let's at least see if AOC has potential. Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing with Aiden O'Connell. If the Raiders do roll forward Aiden O'Connell, let's just say in week 2, and let's say Aiden O'Connell is worse than Gardner Minshew, because at this point we can't think that Aiden O'Connell is better. He couldn't win the job, right? So there's no way we can say right now that Aiden O'Connell is better. That too, it's a subjective thing, right? Because Ivan, you might say that, hey, Aiden O'Connell's better, and that's what you saw, but I would make the opposite argument. I would say in the preseason, Gardner Minshew looked better to me, right? So it's subjective. But at the end of the day, the Raiders coaching staff actually thought Gardner Minshew was the better quarterback. That's why they gave him the job. So at this point, Gardner Minshew is the better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell. Now, that might not actually be true, but that's at least what we kind of can expect. So what happens when we say, Gardner Minshew, you suck, we're benching you, Aiden O'Connell, it's not your team. And then what if Aiden O'Connell sucks? Then what? Are we going to start saying, hey, let's go back to Gardner Minshew? What if our defense, what if what if we're like 4-3 or something? We're still in the thick of the playoff hunt and we can still potentially make the playoffs. Are we gonna, let's go back to the other quarterbacks, go back and forth, right? I think the Raiders got to be consistent, and we can't turn the ball over. You're right. At the end of the day, if you're gonna ask me what's the one thing that lost the Raiders this game, I'm gonna say it was the 4 turnovers, right? I'm gonna say the 4 turnovers. And the thing with the 4 turnovers is the first turnover was a turnover on downs, right? So that's on AP. So AP has to do a better job. The next one was, I think, on Gardner Minshew. It may have been the one on Zamir White. But then the third one was the opposite one of that. So you can't fumble the ball. And then the last one, game may have been over, but, you still can't have a pass tipped, right? That's like basic shit as well. Gardner Minshew tried throwing a pass to, like a sidearm pass on the screen towards the left to Brock Bowers, and the pass got tipped. And then he tried throwing a pass over Khalil Mack. It was a check down that got tipped. That's basic ass shit, man. You got to be able to get the ball to your guys on screen plays and those quick little, wide receiver screens or running back screens. You got to be able to get the ball around guys, right? That's basic stuff right there, right? Yeah, you got to do a better job if you're Gardner Minshew. You just got to do a better job. I don't agree, though, respectfully, that we should switch quarterbacks right now. I would wait at least 6 games. Right. And if it's like we start 0-3, 0-4, and Gardner Minshew's throwing multiple interceptions, he's clearly the issue, then you get rid of him earlier, right? And you switch focus and you go into Aiden O'Connell, and you just stick with Aiden O'Connell, man. If we win 2 games, we'll get another quarterback next year. If not, maybe he takes us in the playoffs, right? But I don't think it's right to say let's go ahead and switch focus. Let's switch into that right away, right? Jose Lopez, shout out to you. Said, good to see you, brother. Sad start to the season. Shaking my head. Shout out to you. 100% agree, man. 100% agree. We're gonna bounce back, man. I know. People aren't gonna think that we're gonna bounce back this year, and the year might be over. There was a time last year, man. I remember we're like, man, this season's terrible. The worst team we've ever seen, and Antonio Pierce gets the job, and we start winning games. Our defense is fired up. Guys are making plays, and we're able to squeeze out a bunch of wins. And literally, the second to last game, if we win that game, which we won that game, let's just be honest, against the Colts last year, they called a flag on Jack Jones that was not a flag, but the kicker had missed the field goal. We had won that game. We would have been in the playoffs last year, right? So anything's possible, right? Anything is possible. Something can always switch. If both of our quarterbacks look bad, maybe there's a team that wants to move off of their veteran quarterback because he's not doing well, or Ryan Tannehill, or whoever it might be, right? The season's not over. There's still a lot of football left to be played. So we'll see what ends up happening, man. I'm still excited for the Raiders. Hopefully we're able to bounce back. Steven, shout out to you, said O-line and offense play calling were terrible. GM did what he could. Defense played lights out. Thoughts? So Gardner Minshew did what he could. Defense played lights out. I agree, man. I do think that the defense did a really, really good job. What's interesting about the Raiders defense is I actually was not 100% sure if our defense was really, really good, or if they just had momentum and they had their backs against the wall, and then AP came in and they're like, hey, we're gonna be, we got to play better than what we are. But they proved to me that defense is the real deal. And what's crazy is, Maxx Crosby has like 5 really good years left. Christian Wilkins has like 4 to 5 really, really good years left. Adam Butler was incredible. I think Adam Butler at this point is in the best time of his career. Butler's like 30 years old. So he's not super young. He probably has like 2 to 3 really good years left. But Adam Butler's never been better, right? He was absolutely incredible. He was making plays. He was blowing up run plays, right? He was a guy that I kind of focus in on the defensive side. I usually watch the defensive line. And Butler, Wilkins, Maxx, these guys were dominating out there. And it wasn't even just them. Like Justin Herbert struggled, right? Herbert was not able to push the ball downfield. Our secondary was just all over it. 17 to 26. Herbert only had 144 yards, right? So he was really, really, really bad out there. And again, it really, this game really just came down to J.K. Dobbins had 2 big runs, right? He had a 61-yard run, and then I don't know what the other one was, probably a 30-yard run. But outside of that, I felt like the Raiders defense was really, really, really good. And I do think that as we kind of go forward, we'll see if this defense can continue to play lights out. I do think they're going to be a top 5 defense this year. I think the Las Vegas Raiders defense is going to be one of the best defenses in the NFL this year. 22 points. How many of those points was actually because of the defense? The 4th down early on in the game was a play that essentially gave them a field goal because I don't think they even picked a first down up. And then we had a fumble. I think the Gardner Minshew fumble actually got them like at the 20-yard line. So that's 6 points right there that the offense essentially gave to the Chargers. So 22 minus 6, right? That kind of puts you right there. I think there was another play. Don't quote me, but I think there was another bad moment by the Raiders as well that may have led to some points. So I think the Raiders defense will be really, really good this year. So I want to talk about this a little bit because this is going to be the new narrative this year, or at least this week. And that is that Maxx Crosby apparently got shut down by a rookie. I don't personally think Maxx Crosby got shut down. I think Maxx Crosby had a lot of really, really good moments where he was getting to the quarterback. I think in this game, people are going to say, hey, the Raiders only had 1 sack. But the thing is Justin Herbert's a top 5 to 7 quarterback. And it's not just because he's a good passer of the football. He knows when to throw the ball away. He knows when to run away. He knows when to get the ball out. Justin Herbert knows when to get rid of the ball. On top of that, Harbaugh's a really, really good coach. He knows how to, when you have a rookie tackle, he knows how to protect that rookie. He knows how to double team, how to influence the pass rush. Harbaugh's a good coach. He knows what he's doing, right? So was Maxx Crosby shut down by a rookie? I don't think so. I don't think he was. But we'll go back tomorrow morning and we'll watch the tape, watch every single time Maxx Crosby went up against Joe Alt. And I'll post a highlight of it. I'll just post every single clip, and you guys can make your own decision on what you guys think. Also, I do want to state this. So on Twitter, I do a jersey giveaway. Every week, we're going to be doing a jersey giveaway on Twitter. But it's if, what I say actually happens. So this week, it was, hey, if Jack Jones gets a pick 6, I'll give a guy I'll give a fan who retweets this tweet, I'll give them a free jersey. It didn't happen this week, but we'll do another one next week. Maybe it's, hey, Maxx Crosby has 2 sacks, or if Christian Wilkins and Maxx Crosby each have at least 1 sack. We'll come up with something where if it happens, we'll give out a free jersey. But I want to do the same thing on YouTube. So let me know how we can do it on YouTube because, I don't have like an email for you guys that I can just quickly reach out to everybody. Let me know what you guys think about that. Let's get into some more of these super chats. Ivan says, I was hopeful for this season, but it looks like we will be a 7 to 9 win team with this offense. Here's the thing. Here's the hopeful part of this, right? If the Raiders are a 9-win team, 1 or 2 more wins, you can win 10 or 11 games. You're in the playoffs, right? So we're going to have games this year where the ball just needs to bounce our way or we just need to play a cleaner game. We just want to make sure that things happen how it should happen where the Raiders are able to win. And if that happens, the Raiders will win 9, 10, 11 games. Maybe not 11. Right? 11 might be pushing it, but for the Raiders to be able to win and actually make the playoffs, we just got to play clean football, right? At the end of the day, the game of football is really comes down to the turnover battle. One of the things that I learned when I went to scouting school, as I've kind of been doing it, but one of the things that I've really taken away from that is, when you're analyzing players, you always got to remember what scheme they're playing in. You always got to consider all those different factors. And, with that, you also have to recognize, if a defensive player is not making plays, like you see him making plays early on, later on, he's not making plays. Well, is the offense not holding on, the possession of the football? Is the offense turning the ball over? Like, what are the things that matter? And it always comes down to turnovers matter, right? It impacts the game a lot. And essentially what I'm trying to say is if the Raiders play a cleaner game today, they win this game, right? The Chargers played a clean game. Right? Chargers had no turnovers this game. They weren't even that good on the offensive side for most of the game, but they made sure that they weren't fumbling. They made sure they weren't throwing interceptions, and they made sure to punt the ball and make the Raiders drive the entire distance of the field. The Raiders, on the other hand, gave away 6 plus points to the Chargers for free, right? Basically just based off of turnovers. So at the end of the day, you always got to look at the situations. You always got to look at what's kind of happening out there. And I think the Raiders just gave this game away, right? In my opinion, I feel like the Raiders gave this game away. Mario Reno says running back receiving touchdown was nice. 100% agree. Was Alexander Madison always number 22? I don't know. For some reason, I thought he was a different number, but I was probably confused with that. But really, really nice play by Madison. Made a man miss. Honestly, that's not even a Gardner Minshew touchdown, if you guys ask me. It's basically a running touchdown, right? Gardner Minshew essentially just checked down, and the running back just made a really, really nice play. So shout out to the running back for that one, man. Akil Smith, shout out to you for the $5 super chat, said, once Jackson Powers-Johnson gets back, the O-line should be better, but the scheme looked atrocious. Gets needs to step up. Good content, brother Raider Nation. Shout out to you, man. Really, really appreciate the super chat. I agree. Is Jackson Powers-Johnson going to start the second he's healthy? That's a question that I don't really know the answer to because, you know, I've been sick so much over the past year, but I'm always creating content for you guys, even if I don't feel good, right? Because getting sick is really not a big deal, right? You cough a little bit, you feel a little cold, whatever, you get over it. Jackson Powers-Johnson's been sick since like Wednesday. That doesn't make sense to me that a sickness kept him out of this game, right? To me, I don't know. Are we sure Jackson Powers-Johnson wasn't kept out of this game so people don't start saying things like, hey, you know, the O-line struggles, put in Jackson Powers-Johnson? Are we sure it wasn't one of those things where the Raiders on purpose just didn't want Jackson Powers-Johnson to be active, at least for the first week? I don't know. Or I really don't know, because to me, Jackson Powers-Johnson's going to be the Raiders' best offensive lineman. I'm confident in saying that. Right? Jackson Powers-Johnson, probably within the first 4 or 5 weeks, will be the Raiders' most dominant offensive lineman, especially based off of how Colton Miller looked today. Colton Miller did not look in shape. He did not look healthy. And it's unfortunate that this is possibly, I shouldn't say probably, it's possible that this season Colton Miller is going to have a bad year, because the fact that he had that shoulder surgery, what that means is Colton Miller was not bench pressing this offseason and maxing out and getting strong as hell. He wasn't working out the way he would have in the previous years because he was rehabbing the shoulder. So Colton Miller wasn't getting better this offseason. He was just trying to get healthy. And he doesn't look the same to me. He looks visibly weaker, right? He doesn't look as like thick in the arms. He doesn't look as strong. And he got pushed by Khalil Mack a couple of times, and 2 of them led to sacks. So I hope Miller bounces back because it was not good on his part. Thayer Munford was okay. I did see him lose a couple times. Didn't actually lead to sacks. Munford did play better than I thought, so shout out to Thayer Munford. I do hope Powers-Johnson gets healthy, and then I also hope, you know, Dylan Parham's game was as bad as I think it was. I hope the Raiders make the switch soon, where Andres Pete steps in at right guard and Powers-Johnson steps in at left guard, and we stop getting bullied, you know, in the interior of the offensive line. Right, I do hope that kind of happens. Shout out to you as well, Akil. Luke Getsy obviously has to step up as well. Shout out to you, Mr. Masik. I hope I'm saying that right. You said Gons loves Nessa forever. Shout out to you, man. Shout out to you. Appreciate the super chat. Perp Calexis, thanks for these group therapy sessions. I mean, streams. Shout out to you, man. I appreciate it, for reals. You know, these streams are help me just as much as they help you guys, man, for reals. I'm going to be doing, what are those, spaces on Twitter. I'll probably do halftime spaces going forward. Today I was a little bit busier and I was kind of hungry, so had to grab some food. I had to create my thumbnail as well, so going forward, I'll prepare my thumbnail in advance. Ernesto Lopez, shout out to you for the $5 super sticker. I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, let's trade Davante Adams. Let's sell the team. Let's sell the roster. I don't think that makes sense. You know, I don't think it makes sense at all. I think the Las Vegas Raiders are just better off sticking it out for this season, try to win, and then let's see what happens. You know, if we release Davante Adams at the end of this season for nothing, it is what it is. His value is not crazy high right now. I know some people might think you're going to get a first-round pick for Adams. You're not. His value at most is like a third-round pick. It probably isn't even that at this point. You know, Davante Adams is, I think, like 30, 31 years old. He has just a couple years left. Some people would even argue he might have slowed down already a little bit based off of what we saw today. Davante Adams, from a value perspective, is not worth that much. The receivers that have the highest value is the receivers that, are in their prime, year 5, 6, or 7. Maybe they want a new contract, which is why a team's going to try trading them. Remember, AJ Brown went for 1 first-round pick. You have guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who was traded like 4 years ago in his prime for like, a 6th-round pick, whatever it was. Stephon Diggs, I don't know what he got traded for, but, guys are getting traded based off their age, based off of how much money they make, more so than the actual production on the field. What the Raiders gave up for Devontae, they're never going to get that back. Zornell Malone, shout out to you for the $4 super chat. You said we need a new ownership. I don't agree with that. I don't think ownership matters as much as the people you put in charge. I think your head coach, your general manager impact the team much more. And I think your coach is the biggest impact. Specifically, you got to hire the best play caller, a guy that runs an offense, as your head coach. That's what's going to matter for long-term success. I know Bill Belichick had success on like kind of the opposite end, where Bill Belichick was able to run a defense, but he had Tom Brady, who ran a great offense, right? If you want to have success the way, the Eagles won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, for example, they had a great scheme on the offensive side that year. The defense did their thing. You can look at like, Kyle Shanahan every year is basically competing for a Super Bowl. If he's not in the Super Bowl, he's in like the championship game. And it's been like that for like 12 years at this point, even before he got to the Niners, right? The Falcons were legit because of Kyle Shanahan. The second Kyle Shanahan left the Falcons, they fell off. Dan Quinn got fired. He was their head coach at that time. Kyle Shanahan went to the 49ers. They became legit, and they've been legit since that time, right? You look at from the time the Rams hired Sean McVay, from the time the Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel, from the time the Detroit Lions hired Ben Johnson, the success that they had. To me, your play caller matters way more than ownership. Your play caller matters more than your head coach, right? If your head coach is a defensive guy the way Antonio Pierce is, your play caller matters more on the offensive side. There's nothing that matters more than that, because you can get Kyle Shanahan to take Jimmy G to the Super Bowl. You can get Andy Reid to take Alex Smith into a divisional, all into the playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl. You can get Mike McDaniel to get Tua Tagovailoa, who's widely considered a bust, right? Most of us thought Tua Tagovailoa was a bust. Mike McDaniel in his 3rd year turned this guy's entire career around. Tua Tagovailoa still kind of sucks, right? Let's just be honest. Mike McDaniel makes him a lot better. And you might need Patrick Mahomes to consistently win Super Bowls, but if you want to be a successful team that's always in the playoffs, that's always competing for a Super Bowl, you got to get that offensive coach, play caller as your head coach, or just the offensive coach in general. You got to get that right first. The thing with hiring Antonio Pierce as your head coach, who's a defensive guy, and then hiring a play caller, is there's going to be a time where your play caller, if he's really, really good, he's going to go get a job somewhere else. He's going to become a head coach, right? Dan Quinn got fired because Kyle Shanahan left, right? And there's coaches around the NFL that have kind of fallen off once their coordinator essentially leaves. I suspect the Detroit Lions will fall off after Ben Johnson becomes a head coach in this next cycle. I suspect the Texans will fall off once Bobby Slowick becomes a coach as well, or becomes a head coach as well. Right? That's my opinion. You guys don't have to agree with me, right? I won't agree 100% with you guys. You guys don't have to 100% agree with me. But since this is my channel, that is my opinion. I just want to put it out there. But shout out to all of you guys, man. I always appreciate all of you guys. Shout out to Molly Mal. $20 super chat, man. Shout out to you guys. I'm excited still for this season, man. I know a lot of people are not excited about this season. The Raiders will bounce back, man. It's just a matter of time. We got to let things come together. Remember, Brock Bowers is a rookie, and he's a guy that is supposed to be, let's be honest, Brock Bowers by next year is going to be the Raiders' best offensive player. Right? Brock Bowers, you can already see it with Brock Bowers. He's a phenomenal player. And, to me, I think the Raiders will bounce back as we kind of go forward. But some of these guys are still young. Trey Tucker is in year 2. Zamir Weiss is really his first year starting. You look at Thayer Munford, this is his real first time starting as well, right? Let's give it a couple of weeks and let's see if the Raiders can bounce back. Kurt Hardy said 11 carries for 24 yards in the first half. O-line is garbage. That is pretty bad, man. Let me see what we finished with. So, 71 yards, 22 carries. I did feel like in the second half we did pop some big carries. So hopefully that kind of continues as we go forward. K-Sid, you think AP is worried about the offensive coordinator? I think he is. I think he 100% is. And he should be. Antonio Pierce should be worried about Luke Getsy because Antonio Pierce won't have a job if Luke Getsy doesn't do his job. Right? If Luke Getsy is not able to get the Raiders offense back on track, Antonio Pierce will be fired at the end of the season. If the Raiders win 4, 5, 6 games this year, I find it hard to believe that AP will be our coach next year. Now, he might be. Right? There's a chance Mark Davis looks at it like, hey, I want consistency long term or whatever. And there's a chance that does end up happening. In my opinion, Antonio Pierce has 16 games to prove it. And Mark Davis should not hold back, man. I really do hope that Mark Davis recognizes how much a play caller impacts your team, how much a great head coach impacts your team. I'm not saying Antonio Pierce isn't necessarily a great head coach. He just hasn't proven it. And he's questionable when it comes to decision making, right? So AP has to be able to prove it to us in order for us to say, hey, he's our guy as we kind of go forward. Johnny said AP needs to do something, looks frustrated all game. I think AP gets frustrated once he makes a decision. It goes the opposite way. I think he starts second guessing himself a little bit. Right? That 4th and 1 punt at the end of the game made no sense to me, man. It made no sense to me. It is what it is, man. The Raiders will bounce back. So tomorrow we will be doing a film breakdown. And we'll be, kind of analyzing what it is that we're taking away from the game. We'll look at positives. We'll look at negatives. Obviously, there's going to be positives no matter, how you look at it. Our defense line's nasty this year, right? So I hope you guys all try to enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope you guys have a good week. Be productive. We'll be having some film content. So subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I hope you guys all have a great day. I'll see you guys next time with another video.